We are currently being recorded. Okay, so we're picking up Hoshaya, the book of Hoshaya. We're now in chapter 4 of the book of Hoshaya, and the book takes a little bit of a turn at this point. The first 3 chapters are more Yechezkel-like, for those who had been with us since the book of Yechezkel, in which Hoshaya acts out these strange, I don't know what you want to call them, but these strange activities that are supposed to reflect back a certain prophetic message. What we get to now is a much more straight up rebuke, which is the much more classical prophetic expectation that you'll have for most of our prophets. And the chapter breaks down into 4 sections. The first section is the sins of the people and the punishment. The second is the lack of leadership, which is a little bit different from some of the times that we've seen when God picks on the lack of leadership in the past. The third section talks about how the Jewish people are blind and connected to idolatry. And the fourth section is a turn to Yehuda. As we noted earlier in the book, the Hoshea is generally perceived to be a prophet of the northern kingdom. And yet here he turns to Yehuda. The question is he speaking in fact to Yehuda at this point? Or is he basically highlighting the dysfunction of Yisrael, saying, stay away from Yehuda because you at least don't corrupt them, right? But we'll talk about that at the last section of this parak. So the parak opens up, like I said, with the sins of the Jewish people. So the chapter 4, verse 1, if you have the green stone, big art scroll Tanakh, it's page 1334. If you have your own Tanakh, it is chapter 4, verse 1 of Hoshea. So it says, Hoshea, Shimu Dvar Hashem b'nei Yisrael, ki riv laHashem im yoshvei haaretz, ki ein emes ve'ein chesed ve'ein das Elokim ba'aretz. So listen to the word of Hashem. God has a fight. He's got a bone to pick with the Jewish people, with the settlers of the land. And honestly, it's amazing when you think about the world that we live in today. I don't know if there's any other prophet that talks about the lack of emes in the same way that Hoshea talks about, but the concept of false news and the concept of the inability to see truth and to have clarity about truth today is really unbelievable in terms of how relevant this is, I feel like, to the modern problem. But you have no emes, you have no truth, as one. Ein chesed, you have no kindness. Ve'ein das, and you have no, das Elokim, you have no knowledge of God. So the Radak parallels this with the end of chapter 2. So if you, chapter 3 was very short, so if you look a little bit back, you have the famous psukim of the Irastich. It's chapter 2, verse 21. Ve'irastich li liolam, ve'irastich li b'tzedek v'mishpat v'chesed v'rachamim, ve'irastich li b'emunah v'yadata et Hashem. Right? So he says that in the same way that God says that we will one day be, engaged. So we had tzedek mishpat, justice and righteousness and justice. Chesed v'rachamim, you had kindness and mercy. And then emunah, because yadata et Hashem, belief in God because you know God, right? So here we're saying we don't have the knowledge of God, so there's no emunah, right? There's no chesed, so that's chesed v'rachamim, and there's no emes because without emes you can't have mishpat and tzedek. Okay, so the Radak is highlighting the connection between what God was hopeful for and what is lacking in the land right now, and is causing the inability for us to enforce or have these ideal values. It's always interesting the threes and how they compare to other threes. It's worth taking the time. I don't have any insight now, but if you wanted to think about, there's lots of threes in the Pirkei Avos to compare where Da'as Elokim, Chesed, and Emes fit in with other threes that we have. Fine. Moving ahead. Pasuk Beis. Alo v'chachesh v'ratzoach v'ganov v'na'of paratzu v'damim naga'u. Now, they basically do everything terrible, right? All of the worst things you could possibly imagine in one pasuk. I don't know if you got a worse pasuk out there, but swearing, lying, murdering, robbing, adultery, and murder is so pervasive at this point that the bloods are hitting each other. So the way that that's understood by the Mefarshim is that there's so much murder that when one murder happens and there's blood splattering around, another murder happens not so far away, that in fact the bloods commingle. Today, the concept of violence begets violence is a very common one, and it's interesting to think about, right, the damim b'damim naga'u, right, that blood touches blood, so to speak, to read that more metaphorically. I didn't see anyone who suggests that, but I thought that it's a okay reading as well. I see. Go watch it with Moshe. Okay, I'll be back. I'll be with you in a minute. Okay, soon. Okay. If you go with Moshe nicely, then very soon. Sorry about that. So we give me 1 second.
Here, you know where Hoshaya is. What?
Okay, so verse 3. So Hoshea continues. Al kain te'eval haaretz ve'umlal kol yoshvei ba v'chayat hasadeh u'va'of hashamayim v'gam tigei hayam ye'asefu. So, first of all, the land will be te'avel. So, from the language of avelut, all the Mefarshim say it's just like talking about the end of the situation based off of what's going to happen. Basically, the world's going to be destroyed, the land's going to be destroyed, and therefore there's going to be a lot of mourning. Not only are the people going to be punished, but the animals as well. They are in the same boat as us, because when the land gets destroyed due to our missteps, it leads to ramifications for them too. The idea of including the fish of the sea is actually pretty impressive. Normally the fish don't get it the same way the animals do. It goes to show you how pervasive this problem is, that even the fish are included. Pasuk Dalet. Ach, ish al yarev v'al yochiach ish v'yamcha k'merivei kohen. So this is the start of section 2. And this is where the shift. So in times past, especially in the book of Yecheskel, we pointed out that sometimes what God will do is, or what the Navi will do is he'll attack the leadership, and by attacking the leadership, he actually gives a pass to the Jewish people. Because, oh, poor Jews, you didn't have good leaders, right? So it's not your fault, it's your leader's fault. What happens here is slightly different. What happens here is almost like the people are told, you have the leaders that you deserve, right? That you've basically created the leadership that, right, is fitting for your people. And we'll talk about it in a second. You'll see how this happens. So, excuse me. So, ish al yarev al yochiach ish. So there's no tochacha. People are not able to give each other any rebuke, which is, it's a very hard thing to do, to give rebuke properly, especially today, even back then. V'yamecha k'merivei kohen, and your people are like those who argue with a kohen. So, to give you context, a kohen, generally speaking, is a person who was supposed to rebuke the Jews in certain capacities. Right? So I'll give you one example. When it came to tzaras, when it came to if someone spoke ill of somebody else, or was particularly haughty, or any of the reasons that someone would get tzaras, they'd have to go to the Kohen. The Kohen would declare whether it was tsaras or not, and help that person on their path back to society. So that was one example of an area where a Kohen had insight into a certain shortcoming of a certain individual, and it was the Kohen's role to engage with this individual until they were ready to come back into society. Okay? So here, instead of listening to the Kohen and having the Kohen lead the way and help this person come back, they would instead say, oh yeah, well, you, right, are so bad because of this, that, and the other thing, right? And so instead of actually trying to grow and listen, when someone would give them rebuke, even someone who had a status that it was part of their job description, instead of hearing it, they would turn it around and say, oh, who are you to be telling me anything, right? Who do you think you are, right? You have this limitation and this fealty and this, right? You do not have the right to give me musar. And so they basically turned it on its head. V'chashal hayom v'chashal gam hanavi v'chal laila v'damisi imecha. Excuse me.
Am I allowed to ask? I don't know how this
works. Always.
So first question is the first pasuk, Ki riv laHashem yoshvei haaretz. I've never heard a Navi use the word riv laHashem, so I'm just wondering if that's unique to Hoshea. And then connecting that to this, ish al yerev ve'amcha kimrive kohen.
We're going there.
Okay, I'll stop now.
No. So, who said this? I think it was the Malbim. Give me 1 second. Yeah. So the Malbim actually makes that very point, Shifra. She makes the point that the language of using the riv, the parallel rivs in Pasuk Aleph and Pasuk Daled, is to say that when man can't, or when people can't rebuke people properly, at that point, at that moment, God has to step in, right? So God has a bone to pick with the Jewish people because no one could do that amongst the people themselves, right? If someone would be able to say to people, right, this is a problem, you need to reform your ways, and people would listen, then God wouldn't have to step in. But because there was no riv, in terms of riv laHashem, so that I'm not sure. I did not look broadly to know whether that is a unique phrase. In this book in particular, Hoshea really likes the word, right? In Parak Beis, he tells the children of his illicit relationship to Rivu imachem, right, in the beginning of chapter 2. It's verse, let's see.
Daled.
Yeah, Daled, Rivu imachem Rivu. It seems to be almost like the calling card of Hoshea is this breaking away from, right, the bad leadership or the bad parent or the bad, and God uses it in the reverse in this case too, saying that, right, he's got this issue, this debate, this dispute with the Jewish people. I'm not sure that anybody else uses it in the same way, but I'm not sure that also meaning it's just a word that Hoshea uses a lot. So for it to appear in the guise of it being from God's perspective to the Jews, I don't think it's so crazy because he just uses it so ubiquitously in the book. But it's a good question in terms of just, I don't know if anybody else uses it in quite the same way. Fine. So now in this pasuk Hey, so the Navi here, basically, by Peh Echad, all of the Mefarshim say the Navi here is the Navi Sheker. And when it comes to the Imecha, right, so again, so let's just translate, right, so you will stumble by day, and the prophet who is with you will also stumble as if by night, and I will silence your mother. So, or it's scatter or destroy, the word damisi is not so clear. But the Mefarshim understand Imecha is Knesset Yisrael, and the Navi is a Navi Sheker. So the idea being, right, you put your lot with this this false prophet, and this is one of the things that we've tried to highlight at various times in our study of the prophets, is that sometimes we look at the world today and we say, the world today is so hard to make sense of. It's so hard. We don't have clarity. It would have been so nice if we had prophecy. And I've always pointed out that even the prophets, right, are not always sure what exactly God's trying to communicate with them. And sometimes they get it wrong. And there are false prophets who are at work all at the same time. So we think that the Jews back then had this perfect clarity. And the reality is they didn't. And these Jews, right, clearly put their cards with the wrong team, right? They choose the wrong side, and they're basically told you're going down with the ship, right? You wanted to follow these false prophets? Good. You're going to follow these false prophets and all of the ramifications that come with that. And I apologize, but that's just the reality of your future. Now, it's a little bit disconcerting, but it's also important that we don't kind of glorify, right, that what once was as opposed to what is, right? Because I find that we sometimes do that. There certainly is a concept of Yeridat HaDorot in Judaism, of the lowering of the generations, and we certainly don't have prophecy. At the same time, it's important that we don't look at our times as being so impossible to navigate. And if only we had, right, everything would be clear. The reality is God, right, put us on this world to do our best, and that's what we have to do always, regardless of the complexity and the lack of MS that exists even today. Fine.
Did
So
the prophecy actually fail?
what?
Prophecy actually failed.
In many cases, yes.
This didn't work.
Right. I mean, yeah. You look at Eliyahu. Eliyahu tries again and again. And it's like beating a dead horse. Just doesn't work. Right. And even the Shoftim. Okay, yeah, the Shoftim come bring the Jews back for a short period of time, and then they just go back again. Right. Time and again, prophecy comes up short. Prophecy is contradicted by false prophets. Prophecy itself is not always so clear. So it's an imperfect choice of communication, and it's important that we realize that. I also always make the distinction between the prophecy of the rest of the prophets and the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu. Right, the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu had a certain clarity to it that none of the other prophets have, which is important for where the Torah stands in the hierarchy. But that being said, it's important to have that clarity about the disclarity of generations of Jews, because I think it's a comforting thought, I think, to realize that we all have to kind of do our best given our situation. So moving ahead, Pasuk Vav, Nidmu ami mibli hadas, ki ata hadas ma'asta ve'em asecha mikahen li matishkach torat elokecha ve'eshkach panecha gam ani. So this, I don't really follow the exact one-for-one Mida Keneged Mida here, but right, so my people has eliminated for lack of knowledge, for you have spurned knowledge, and I will spurn you from serving me, and as you have forgotten the Torah of your God, I too will forget your children. Yeah, so what he does here is he kind of builds off of some of the themes that he's already built. So nidmu ami mi beli hadas, right? So the beli das again is one of the problems, right? Specifically the das elokim, right? Because what have you done? The das, most likely referring to das elokim, has become disgusting. It's become right. You just don't enjoy it. You've spurned it. You want nothing to do with it. And the person, right, who is supposed to, right, help you, right, michahenli, right, so that the ability to serve that also doesn't really work. And therefore, right, the Das Elokim, what's a Das Elokim? It's probably V'tishkach Torah Elokacha. And therefore, because of all of these pieces, I'm going to forget your children. Now, I don't get the last part. Like, why is this forgetting the children? We've saw earlier, one of the main things that Hoshea tries to do is he says, Rivu imachem rivu, right? Okay, so the mothers, I get, they're lost causes, right? But the children are the hope. The children are the future. So that's the one piece I don't really fully, I didn't see anything that was very compelling in terms of why is it that because you've, right? Now, one of the things that we're going to see in the upcoming sections of this chapter is that there is this cycle of issues where when you let, right, the outside culture or the false prophet lead you down a certain path, there are going to be ramifications, right? What's going to happen is that your children are going to grow up in a world where they're influenced by and from lots of things that, frankly, they don't want to be influenced by, or you won't want them to be influenced by, rather, right? And so when that happens, that causes them to start at a handicap, at a disadvantage in terms of being able to connect to God. And so that leads them down their own path, which in theory can lead them even further away, right? So there is this cycle that we're going to see, and perhaps Hoshea is alluding to that at this point, but from everything we've seen in the book, I didn't really appreciate or understand why the lack and the almost disgust with knowledge, particularly knowledge of God and knowledge of God's Torah, is going to lead God to forget the children. If anything, right, what we've seen in many other cases of when the leadership or the parents, when they go down the wrong path, normally God says, but the children are the glimmering hope, right? There's still a hope. There's still a hope with the followers, with the children. They had bad leaders, they had bad parents, but they can come back. Here, it's almost like, right, it's almost like because of the bad parents, because of the bad leadership, right, the people deserve it too, or the people get forgotten too, the children get forgotten too. It's just a different take. It's a much more negative take, but it is what it is. So Hoshea is certainly not mincing words and not giving you even a little glimmer of hope at this point. So it's bad. Excuse me. Fine. So moving ahead. Pasuk Zayin. Kirubam kain chatuli kvodam bekalon amir. As much as they have increased, so they sinned again. Right? So again, you may have thought, oh, when they have more children, maybe there'll be some who are worth saving. Maybe there'll be, right, more people who could get back on path. But instead, it seems like the more people there are, the worse everything keeps on getting, not better. Pasuk Ches, Chatas ami yochelu bes avonam yis'u nafsho. And this is like a really disturbing pasuk. Right, the sins offerings of my people they consume, and their iniquities his soul yearns. So again, referring to the leadership, the Kohanim, right? So the Kohanim get a piece of every chatas. They get a piece of every asham. They get to eat a part of the korbanot of the sins of the Jewish people. So that being said, a Kohen's job is to prevent that from happening, right? That when the Kohen has someone come and bring a chatas, this is another area where the Kohen has insight into a certain particular sin that the person is doing, and is supposed to help that person from repeating this issue too many times. But financially, sinning is good, right? Sinning is good. I get my dinner, free dinner, every time you sin, right? So the Kohanim, instead of trying to help the Jews to free themselves from their sin, they looked forward to, right, the sins of the Jewish people. If anything, they egged them on, right? They didn't view this as an opportunity to help the Jews reform. Instead, they viewed this as an opportunity to get free dinner. And that's a very, very dangerous place for Kohanim to be, right? There was also right, a notion back in the day that the Nevi'im would, especially the false prophets, would get paid for giving prophecy, right? They were like palm readers, the false prophets, right? And so you have some prophets who actually make note of the lunches that they got because they gave prophecies. It's a very dangerous place to be in when your livelihood depends on, right, the people that you're trying to help think the next step. There's a reason that for many, many years, rabbis weren't paid by shuls. They actually had their own, right? Rashi was a viner. He made wine. Rambam was a doctor. They were also rabbis. I strive to have some sense of financial independence, so that my salary from the shul is not the only source that I can survive off of. But I thank my wife for helping make that a viable reality. Because if you don't have that, then honestly, how can you really be honest with people if you're always worried about the ramifications of what you say to people? It doesn't mean you should be mean, but sometimes people don't like hearing, right, the ugly truth and what they need to try and work on, even if you say it nicely. And so the Kohanim here are getting stuck in a system. It's not a perfect system. I think there's definitely reasons for it. It's another conversation for another time, why, right, the Kohen eats part of the chatas and whatnot. But if a Kohen gets so caught up in getting the free dinner that he's not doing his, right, primary responsibility of leading this person back to a path of connection to God, that's a real problem. Yeah, Shifra.
So I understand that that's what this pasuk is about the Kohanim and how they're using the chatat as food. On the other hand, Bnei Israel is still bringing a chatat, which implies at least some either charata, some feeling of guilt. So there's still something there, or of course it could just be like a very, I don't mean to offend, but a Catholic idea of I pay and then I don't have to.
So yeah, no, I think unfortunately at that period of time, because of the ubiquity of Avodah Zarah and the korbanot that they're bringing to Avodah Zarah as well at this time, the fact that they're bringing a chatat is not a great indication that there's a sense of connection. Also, if in fact they're talking about the Northern Kingdom, it's very possible that the chatat that's being brought here is not even necessarily in the Beit HaMikdash. It could be at the shrines in Dan and I forgot the other city in the north that are where the Yeravim ben Nevat set up his golden calves, and the Northern Kingdom continued to bring their korbanot. Now again, as we noted many times, it's not Avodah Zarah, it's Avodat Hashem Zarah in those locations, but still not a ideal form of korban. If so, maybe that was a good moment just to, right, when we first started the book of Hoshaya, we had a quick conversation about where Hoshaya was navigating. And based off of much of the locations in the book and everything else, right, most of the scholars today and even the Mefarshim earlier think that Hoshaya was a northern prophet for most of the time. He was maybe even from the north, but he certainly seems to be talking to the north. What's really interesting is if you just do a thought experiment of him talking to the Bnei Yehuda about the north, because that's what we'll get to in the last section, right? To some extent, you get a little bit of a different feel for what Hoshea is trying to accomplish. It's almost like there are some who say that when it comes to the Rasha at the Pesach Seder, we don't, right, the pasuk that's quoted for the Rasha is the same pasuk as the Shena de Lishol in the Torah. We don't quote the pasuk that's associated with the Rasha in the Haggadah. And the reason that's given by some is that, right, the Rasha is not asking a question, he's making a statement. And so we don't answer the Rasha. We just try to protect the people who are not the Rasha. Right? Because sometimes there are people who are not ready to hear answers, and the problem is the people they're influencing. Right? So imagine that Hoshea is trying to actually talk to the Bnei Yehuda, right, and saying, this is all the things that are happening to the northern kingdom, right? This is all the things that are happening in the north. And so even though we are, right, it seems like he's talking to the north, everything indicates he's talking to the north, right? Perhaps he's talking to the south. He's talking to the Judean kingdom as a way of trying to say, I know that really my audience should be the north, but they're so lost. There's such a lost cause already. It's just not worth it, right? But you guys should, right? So that's another possibility. I'm not sure what you said. What you said, Shifra, reminded me of that. But we're gonna get to that the last section of this chapter. I lost my train of thought as I was saying that. But fine. So let's come back for now. So pasuk tet. Vaya ka'am kakohen upakadati alav drachav uma'alalav ashiv lo. So basically, what you've done, you're going to have to answer for it. Just like the Kohen is going to have to answer for his actions, you're going to have to answer for your actions. Again, right, this notion that it's not that the leadership is bad, so therefore the people get a pass, but rather it's almost the equation of, right, these are the leaders that you chose, these are the leaders that you've put in power, these are the leaders that you have, and therefore, right, this is the reality. You're going to go down with that ship. You've chosen those leaders. You didn't have to choose those leaders. You could have chosen differently. The fact that you chose leaders that pamper you instead of trying to help you grow, because you chose leaders that are actually as corrupt as you are, right? Therefore, you are going to go down with that ship. Pasuk Yud v'achlu v'lo yisba'u hiznu v'lo yifrotzu ki et Hashem azavu lishmor. Right? They will not be sated, they will be promiscuous, but will not proliferate, for they've abandoned Hashem, ceasing to keep his ways. So this is really, I had a real hard time figuring out what this, so being promiscuous, again, not a good thing. So the not procreating piece, right? Knowing all of the challenging realities of children that are born outside of a marital structure, outside of a stable home, is not a very good reality. But here it's almost like, right, your promiscuity is not going to lead you to proliferate, and that's, right, almost like too bad for you, right? It's like it's perceived as a bad thing. It's like safe sex would be bad, right? Because you didn't have, right, when you were promiscuous, you didn't end up proliferating, which is strange because I think most of us would say that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't see anything again that helped me understand exactly what he's going for. At the same time, you definitely have in this, right, in the next part of this chapter, a long conversation or a long back and forth about the relationship between adultery and idolatry, which we've also discussed a decent amount over the time. But I think in this next section, we have one of the best cycles of these two things, of adultery and idolatry, and how one leads into the other and back. So let's run through that now.
Just he's nuvelo yifratzu. Could it just be that, you're having inappropriate relationships, and that's going to affect your ability to conceive even within your marital relationship, like as a punishment?
Interesting. That wasn't what I had seen, but it's not a terrible, meaning when people are promiscuous outside their marriage, normally their relationship inside their marriage is a little bit rocky. So you definitely could go down that path of reading it that way. I didn't see anything before to say that, but it doesn't mean it's not a kosher reading. Thank you. Fine. So, pasuk Yud Beis is zenus v'yayin v'tirosh yikach lev. Right. So promiscuity and wine basically take the heart. They blind the person from being able to see reality. And Ami be'etzo yish'al u'maklo yagid lo ki ruach zunim hit'a v'yiznu mitachat Eloheihem. So, my nation be'etzo yish'al, with its wood they ask. Anyone have any thoughts what that means? With their wood they ask, where they ask their wood.
I mean, it sounds like they're talking to their idols, right?
Yeah, so the simple explanation is them talking to their idols. The Radak had a second explanation, which is it's all going towards idolatry, right? But the Radak said that maybe this is like a blind person with a walking stick, right? That a blind person, right? They use their stick to see, right? But they're blind. So the Jews at this point, they don't really have leaders. Right? They don't really have a proper path forward, but they're using their stick, so to speak, to aimlessly feel around. But the promiscuity and the wine, as they just had in the previous verse, have blinded their hearts to a point that they can't seem to move forward. Right, and the promiscuity is just it's enrapturing, it's grabbing them. They can't seem to break free. Right. So al roshei ha'arim yizabechu v'al gvaos yikateru tachas alon v'levnei v'ela ki tov tzila al kein tiznena v'noseichem v'chaloseichem tinafena. So you follow, right? You do all of these korbanot. You bring all these korbanot to various high places of your idolatries, and the result of that is that your daughters, right, act with promiscuity, and your daughter-in-laws commit adultery, right? So you have, again, right? You on the one hand, right, you let these cultures in, and this is what we saw a lot with the prophets who really railed against certain alliances that brought with those alliances the alliance of cultures. Right, so when the Assyrians made an alliance, they brought the Assyrian culture and the Assyrian gods, and they were pervasive. Right, the Baal and Asherah were all over the place, and it was a tremendous problem for the Jews for many, many, many years. And so when you made those, you brought that idolatry in, it led to a certain loosening of certain morals and promiscuity. And when you had promiscuity with said heathens, right, said outsiders who had different faiths, then you brought, right, their idols into your house. And then when you bring those into your house, you have more of a loosening of, right, the morals again, which then brings you down this rabbit hole of adultery to idolatry, back to adultery, back to idolatry. And so you have this back and forth in these psukim between these two things, promiscuity and idolatry, because in one way or another, whether you let in the culture via the idolatry or you let in the culture via the adultery, they lead one to the other, and it gets you trapped. And the wine certainly doesn't help in terms of you being able to make the right decisions moving forward. And so you have this very cluster of issues that is a very entrapping moment. Lo'ef code al binoseichem ki tiznena ve'al kaloseichem ki tinafena ki hem im hazonot ifaredu ve'im hakideshot izabechu ve'am lo yavin yilabet. Right, and so now you have, right, so I will not punish your daughters when they commit harlotry, or your daughter-in-laws when they commit adultery, and the men are secluded with harlots and sacrifice with prostitutes, and the people that does not understand will stumble. Right? So here you have almost like a throwback to what I had alluded to at the very beginning, that so often when leadership is blamed, some people are viewed as, right, like, what better could they have done? Right? They're kind of stuck in this reality, but it's like so little so late, right? Meaning the whole system, the whole society is so corrupt at this point. You have, right, drunkenness is now a norm, idolatry and adultery are now a norm, to the point right? That, right, when your daughters are committing adultery and harlotry at this point, right, you've gotten so far, meaning in the beginning, right, you made a choice. You put your choice with these leadership, you're going down with the ship. You're going down with the ship, you're going down with the ship, right? And so for the overwhelming majority of this chapter, Hoshea is building this concept, which again is very not similar to many other prophets who basically say that when the leadership is doing evil things, you can't blame the people. But here, you made your bed, you're going to sleep in it. And it, until the point that it gets so bad, it's so pervasive, the system is so corrupt, you're in this cycle of adultery, idolatry, drunkenness that's so hard to break out of, that at this point, the prophet says, at this point, it's like, it's not even worth it. It's not even worth, right, punishing your daughters and daughter-in-laws for their promiscuity, because at this point, it's so pervasive. What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? What other options do they have? Which is a scary place to get to. Fine. And this is now where you have the final shift to the final section of the chapter, which is the message to Yehuda. So you just witnessed, right, the issues and the problems and what happened to the Jews in the north. And at this point, they are so far gone. They're such a lost cause that God is saying that even when your daughters and daughter-in-laws are promiscuous and are committing harlotry and adultery, that's not going to, right, bring down God's ire, because the system is so corrupt at this point. Hoshea then turns to Yehuda and says, Yehuda, listen up. Verse 15, Tesvav. Im zoneh ata Yisrael, al ye'esham Yehuda, v'al tavo ha'gilgal, v'al talu beit aven, v'al tishavu chai Hashem. Right, good. Israel, you've turned astray. Let Yehuda not become guilty. Do not come to Gilgal. Do not ascend to Beit Aven, which is Beit El, which is the other city that had the golden calf. And do not swear falsely, saying, as Hashem lives. Again, the Jews felt very, very, very comfortable living in the Jewish world and then the idolatrous world simultaneously, right? So don't swear by Hashem lives, right? And then you go next door and you walk into your Baal worship and you go into your Asher worship and you worship there as well with the same sense of comfort. Just stop. For Israel, right? So Pasuk Tet Zayin Ki Kaparas Oriras Ara Yisrael Ata Yir'em Hashem Kekeves Ba Merchav. I really tried finding a video. I tried finding a video of what a lamb grazing in a very open field looks like. But the Mefarshim all seem to say, I can't vouch for this one way or the other, that a lamb needs to be kind of directed in terms of where to graze, and when it's too open, it's almost disorienting for a lamb who's not used to the big open spaces. So the idea, right, is that Israel has strayed from Hashem. So it's interesting that you use the cow, or meaning like because of the golden calves. I thought that was an interesting kind of just little note, right? So the way we're cow, Hashem will graze them like a lamb on a broad range, which apparently is something that's disorienting for said lamb. Good, and let's finish up 17 and 18 and 19. So Chavur Atzavim Ephraim Hanach Lo, right? Ephraim is so attached to their idols, just let them go. If they're so lost, just leave them. I know you have an instinct to try and help them, just leave them. They are a lost cause. And Sar Savam Haznei Hiznu Avu Hevu Kalon Magineha. a lot of double language there. But their adulterous drinking orgies have become foreign to me. Her rulers love to invite disgrace. So again, their culture has become so pervasive. There's nothing they can do to get out of it. Tara ruach osa bichnafeha v'yevoshu mizbechosam. Right, the wind has bound her by her wings. They will be ashamed of their sacrifices. And this, going back to Shifra's point earlier, right, their sacrifices that they brought. So when, right, the culture that they put all of their eggs in that basket ends up being, right, the source of their bonds, right, being the source of what causes them to, right, lose the battle, be captured, right, be exiled. So then all of the korbanot that they brought for all those times and all those periods, right, that they thought, oh, I'm doing this because this is going to help me, right, to achieve whatever I needed, whether it was rain or whatever they were praying to those gods for. So at this point, right, v'yevoshu mizbechosan, they're going to be embarrassed by their altars. So Yehuda, stay away. They're a lost. Yisrael's a lost cause. Don't be influenced. Right, close down your doors. Make sure that you don't let that culture pervade with amongst you as well. Right. At this point, there's nothing you can do, which is really sad. Right. It's a really this is not a very happy parak. Hoshea is pretty brutal in this chapter, and we're only going to get more in the couple of chapters to come. He's dealt with the Kohanim and the leadership there, and some of the others. And what's going to happen is, moving forward, we're going to deal with the monarchy next, which hasn't really been mentioned too much yet, but he's got lots more to talk about in terms of things that he's upset with. Any thoughts or questions before we end?
I have one quick sort of global question, a meta question maybe, which is, it's interesting. So how you describe this, I hadn't really put all the prophets together this way, which is to say, some focus on leadership, some focus on the people, some focus on idolatry, and each one has their particular focus. But has anybody done a sort of a study of, like a meta study of all the prophets and say, when you put all of the things that got canonized together, is there sort of a primary message that gets through and through? And I think about it because last night, Motzi Shabbat, we turned on the TV to see what was going on in the world, and for the first time I've seen an ad from the health leaders. I think the Surgeon General was on there, and the woman who's running the coronavirus response. And the message that they said was, look, we have to look out for each other now. Like, we generally look out for ourselves, but now it's time to actually pay attention to how our actions affect others, which is not a message that we generally have in our society, as a primary motivator. And thinking about the prophets in a more general sense, each one of those, we get the leader that we deserve, but it's the bad leadership that drives the people, but the people choose the leader, and so on and so forth. So has anybody sort of studied or I imagine they must have expanded upon the prophets in a sort of global sense?
So not to my knowledge, but I'll say this. So there are some teachers out there who have a pretty good bird's eye view of Tanakh, right? Like Menachem Leibtag is a good example. He's one of the people that really brought the notion of finding the centralizing message of a book, not necessarily of all the books, but of a book, to the fore. That's something that he does a lot with certain sections of Tanakh. He's producing like all the time to this day. Like, he's always coming up with new ideas, but he'd be a fruitful person to look at. There are a couple of people who are these who have a bird's eye view of all of Tanakh, and they're the people that I think could give you a sense of that. I certainly am not quite there yet. So I think that what I've been trying to draw upon is that as we study more and more texts together, right, to try and show and highlight some of the parallels and differences with some of the conversations that we've seen, even just between Hoshea, Cheskel, or some things we saw in Melachim, right? We haven't covered all the books, but we've covered some of the books. And you can start to have conversations on a more complex level once you have a little bit more background that you can draw from. So I would say you can look for my leap tag to talk about some of those more global themes of Tanakh. Idolatry is certainly a major piece of so much of what happens, and right there's not for no reason that the rabbis told us that when we prayed to get rid of the inclination towards idolatry, we lose prophecy, right? That those two things are forever in, right? They're just in this constant struggle, and it certainly seems to have been, right, the cultural norm of that time was so hard to break away from.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
But I'm not sure it's so different now. You know what I mean? I was really struck today that the message of the prophet is so relevant to this particular moment, you know? And so, we get rid of idolatry and we get rid of prophecy, but at the same time we have different sorts of idolatry and different sorts of, prophecy in terms of, media and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure things, as you said, I'm not sure things are so wildly different. It's just the names have changed.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. But that was what I was highlighting at the beginning of the chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Just something to think about as we go through this, because today I was particularly struck by those thoughts.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Rick says, please stay on because he thinks there's something technical he can do to help you with the Zoom.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. This was great.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Raphael? Come talk to Rabbi Neuman.
Hey, Rabbi Neuman.
Hey.
So we had some issues, Trip had some issues getting on, and I think the problem was that you had did you put in a new link for today's shiur?
No.
It was the same link you used last week?
Yeah.
Same ID?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then I don't know what it is. Okay. Are you using the same ID for all these meetings? For all your shiurim?
For all of this shiur is the same link for all of them.
Okay.
But not for I mean, like, it's not the same link as I use for Shachar, same link I use for Mincha, meaning Shachar has its link, Mincha has its link, this shiur has its link.
Yeah, you might think of shiurim. No, so it makes me, I'm not sure what happened, why Shif had a problem, because we tried to put in the number, and it might have been, yeah, I don't know what happened, because then I got but you might try, at least for your shiurim, because you're not going to give two shiurim at the same time, to have like one link of Rabbi Neuman shiurim, so we know, because somehow, I think we were trying to get on a different link.
So the easiest way to do it is what we've set up is on the homepage of the Torah Met website. If you just go there, you could just click on it, and as long as you have Zoom.
That's what she was trying to do. Let me just see. Hold on.
You don't even see the link. It's really just we made a hyperlink from the website.
Yeah, let me just see. Not coming up. Yeah, there we go. I see from the main. Okay. No, it's loading. Site can't be reached. Okay, I'm going to log off and try that.
Okay.
I'm going to leave the meeting and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Leave meeting.
Hey.
Okay, that's fine. It's totally not clear from our class will click links to join this class via Zoom. Okay, I guess that's okay. One thing I would suggest though, so first of all, you should put in the meeting ID there for people who, for whom it doesn't work. The other thing is telephone. So you can call in
Yeah.
to a Zoom thing if you put in a telephone number for them to call, because people may not have internet, or like Schiffer's, let's put it this way, Schiffer's internet wasn't working. It wasn't working off her computer. She could have called in and said, oh, I'm having a problem, or she could have listened in. So, we always put in, there's a bunch of telephone numbers they give, but you only need to give one with the meeting ID.
Right.
And that would be a help. You have this you don't have this password protected from the link, because it's password protected on the join. I guess that was what you sent out before. Schiffer had something, I guess an email or something with a password, and to get on, we have to enter both the link and the password.
Yeah, the meeting number and the password.
Yeah. Reason that's password protected, or?
No, so that's why we just jumped to the link, because it was easier.
Okay, that's right. But you could turn off the password protection.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially if you have the link, because anybody now can get in.
Yep.
Okay. That was it. Yeah, that was just it.
Yeah, we were playing with it last week a little bit. Having it on the website seems to have been the easiest. If people continue to have problems, we'll have to find another way to post. The problem with putting the meeting number and everything, all the other information, is that for some people, less is more.
Right. No, I understand that.
For some people, when you add all the other things, you're like, what do I do with all this? I just show me how to get there.
Right. Understood. Yeah, I guess it's right. I guess just from our experience this morning, I'm wondering whether you're losing people because, again,
Right.
Schiffer wasn't able to get on, and then I have Zoom on my computer. So
the problem this morning, honestly, was that davening started a little bit late because we weren't sure if some people were having trouble because it's a different link because it starts an hour later, which I have to just make it the same link as every other one and just add the time so that it's the same davening Shacharis link for everybody, for every day. And normally, for Monday to Friday, it's the same link, but Sunday we daven an hour later. So I made a separate link, but it confused some people. So we started late because some people got confused. So I was still on that meeting when you probably first tried getting on, which is probably why you had trouble.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
100%. That's actually a real problem with Zoom because you can't host two meetings at once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's probably was the issue.
That was the issue this morning. Okay.
So I have to work on that also because I want to make sure that we're done before the next thing starts. I thought we would be done, but we didn't start 10 minutes. We started 10 minutes late. Shacharis this morning.
So again, I would suggest one link. Actually, one link you can for Shacharis, Mincha, and Mariv, or because again, then you have to find the link.
I understand.
The other thing is to have somebody else host Shacharit on Monday. Oh, well, yeah.
I have to run, but
Okay.
Thank you for the feedback.
All right, take care.
Yep.
Bye.